Yo guys, what's going on? I'm Tim Kelly of The Real Sports Talk, joined by my co-host Justin Gossi. This is The Real Sports Talk and Nation Sports Blog presents the 30 Clubs, 30 Previews MLB special. We've previewed a ton of MLB teams so far, Justin, and people can go check out all those previews at youtube.com/MrKelstar. On the right-hand side of the page, you will see a 2013 MLB preview playlist. You click on that playlist, all the teams we've done so far are there, and if we haven't done them, then we will be getting to them shortly because MLB is not that far off, thankfully, and that means that your favorite team at some point will be previewed, your friend's favorite team, so pass these videos on, share them on Twitter, Facebook, everything, get the word out because these are in-depth previews of every single MLB team. Justin, today we are on to the Chicago White Sox, a team that last year I didn't have high expectations for. They had moved on from Ozzie Guillen and Mark Burley, let both of them go to Miami, where neither of them currently are now. They had let both of them go, and it appeared like it was a transition year. People weren't necessarily sure why Robin Ventura was brought in as the manager. And yet, through all that, this is a team that led the AL Central for a majority of the season, ended up going 85-77. Robin Ventura finished in the top 5 in AL Manager of the Year voting. So, while they ultimately could not hold on to the division, the Tigers, who really were the better team, as we ended up seeing in the playoffs, they were able to move on and go to the playoffs. The White Sox going 85-77 last season was actually a very productive season in my mind.
Yeah, the Chicago White Sox of last year, it was under a new regime last year, and I honestly have to agree with you, Tim, there that when you looked at the team last year, I didn't have a lot of high expectations. They brought in a couple of new guys from the farm system. We're seeing the development of Taylor Flowers, Alejandro De Aza, who's their center fielder. He is now their full-time center fielder. He played pretty well last year. Vicencio, who's their left fielder, he's going to get playing time this year. And there is a couple of new faces around the organization when you head into their off-season moves. They didn't really make a huge impact, but they brought in some guys that can provide depth at the positions. They were able to bring back Dwayne Wise, who went on to go play for the Yankees for a short period of time, and then they were able to get Jeff Keppinger from free agency from the Tampa Bay Rays, as he's going to be the team's primary third baseman.
Yeah, overall they did not do a ton in the offseason. Dwayne Wise is only going to really provide, what he's really ever provided is a tremendous glove in the outfield, late inning replacements in left field, really all over the outfield he's very valuable, but left field is probably the position he is most valuable to this team in. We saw that in one of Mark Burley's 2 perfect games there when he robbed a home run. I mean, he really has a tremendous glove. Bringing in Jeff Keppinger, that's a nice move. So, without further ado, let's get on to previewing this team position by position. We will begin at DH, where Adam Dunn, he struck out 222 times and hit 204, but he hit 41 home runs and 96 RBIs, and I know that 204 is horrendous. I know 2 years ago he had 159. I know that 222, I believe, is the Major League record for strikeouts. But you know that going in with Adam Dunn that you're not going to get a high average and you are not going to get a guy that is going to not strike out a ton. You're going to get a guy who's going to be, him and Mark Reynolds and Ryan Howard are going to be right up there for the most strikeouts in the MLB, and that's what you get. But you also get a guy that in most seasons has hit 40 home runs, is going to give you 100 RBIs, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not necessarily saying I would take Adam Dunn in my lineup because the strikeouts are so huge, the average is so huge. But, 41 home runs, 100 RBIs, I can certainly see why the White Sox have him in there because he brings such good power.
Yeah, Adam Dunn last year, a guy who in the season prior, the off-season prior to 2011, during the 2012 off-season, Adam Dunn was actually thinking about retiring from baseball after a very horrendous 2011 campaign for the team. But you know what? He decided, was going out in 2012. And Tim, you even said before the season starts that Adam Dunn was going to be your comeback player of the year. You know what? His strikeouts was really what held him back. But you know what? This guy still produced at the plate. 41 home runs last year, 96 RBIs. I hope that he can come back, and you know what? his best days, of a fielder is not going to happen anymore. He's one of the most horrendous fielders I've ever seen. But you know what? This guy does bring it to the plate. This guy has a really productive power bat, and that's what this White Sox team needs in this lineup. And you're going to have to hope that he can get that average up this year. Because last year he bat 204 in that area. But you know what? I still think this guy can bat. I'll be really happy with if Adam Dunn is able to go out there and hit maybe 250 or maybe even 260.
He has hit over 250 before, but honestly, I think that's asking for a bit much. I think with Adam Dunn, he's a guy that if he can just hit 235, hit 240. If you can get at least into that area, you can at least make the case that the home runs are enough. He does walk a lot, and he said he's going to change his approach at the plate coming into this year. He's going to be a little less patient, actually, because being patient, he's worked a ton of walks, and he's also worked in the deep counts. He's taken a lot of strikes, which is what makes him strike out so much. But I'm not sure that necessarily that's the best thing for Adam Dunn. He has been a guy who has been... he might be the best pure power hitter that we've seen in the MLB over the last 10 seasons, and that he certainly has his deficiencies. Is he the overall player that guys like Prince Fielder and Albert Pujols and Ryan Howard and some of the bigger power hitters have been? Miguel Cabrera, of course not, but in terms of just pure power, Adam Dunn, he's been amazing with the power. It's just, unfortunately, he's been a horrendous fielder and strikes out and doesn't hit for a high enough average. So, not to get too depressive on Adam Dunn, because I actually like Adam Dunn. But behind the plate, Tyler Flowers will be getting the look as this team's catcher. Hit 213 last year in 52 games at the MLB level. 7 home runs, 13 RBIs. At the AAA level, at AAA Charlotte, hit 261 with 15 home runs and 32 RBIs. I think that this is a guy that you're looking at about 12 home runs this year, 45 RBIs. That's what you're going to take out of him, and you hope that he works with this team very well, or you hope that he works with this starting rotation well, because he's a guy that we've heard has a very good work ethic, is a hard worker, and regardless of the fact that he comes into 2013 with the starting job, I was reading this on MLB.com today, he is still very motivated and almost he's coming to spring training like he has something to prove.
Yeah, I think Tyler Flowers, when you guys look at this guy's numbers in the farm system of the team, back down in 2011, he spent the entire season with the AAA Charlotte Knights. You know what, this guy really wowed me, because when you look at this guy has had great production for the team. He also had, a minor, he was also injury prone a little bit, but he played in 65 games in 2011. He saw some playing time last year, but you know what, when you see him play full time, you're gonna get something really intriguing out of him. Out of most catchers, you see, great fielding abilities, great command. That's what you'll be seeing at Tyler Flowers here. But you know what? On top of that, you're getting great power out of him. 15 home runs in 65 games in 2011 at the AAA level. And you know what? He's going to be bringing in a very solid 261 average to this team. But you know what? I do expect those numbers to go up, because this guy had great minor league film. And I hope that he can really adapt really well to the major league level, because he's going to be getting the everyday look at the catcher's position. You're not going to have a veteran guy to lead you, so he's just pretty much depending on this team to really have him adapt to a full-time MLB catcher.
Yeah, A.J. Pierzynski gone after a long time with the Chicago White Sox. He's off to Texas. So Hector Jimenez is going to be the backup for this team. Jimenez has gotten a cup of coffee, as they say, with the Houston Astros, Los Angeles Dodgers, and Chicago White Sox. But in his MLB career, he's played a total of 11 games. So there's not a ton to go off of. He's 30-plus years old. He's really not going to bring a ton, but I think the one thing he does bring is he brings some pop off the bench. He's not going to be a great average hitter, but as a backup, it's all dependent on what Flowers does, because you don't have another great option for this team. If Flowers is not able to have the type of success, then they're probably not. That's a key role in this team, because not only do they need him to replace some of the production Pierzynski brought in the plate, but it's key for him to work well with this staff, and then also Pierzynski was a leader for this team to kind of step up in a role like that. A guy who will have no problem stepping up in a role like that is Paul Konerko, a guy who has spent his entire MLB career, with the exception of a few early days with the Reds and the Angels. He spent in the late 90s, but he spent pretty much his entire productive MLB career with the Chicago White Sox, and quietly has just put together a tremendous career. very well could hit 500 home runs before it's all said and done. And he continues to remain productive. He hit 298 last year, 26 home runs, 75 RBIs, and that was actually down from the year before where he hit 300 with 30 home runs. Paul Konerko is still a guy I think that can hit close to 30 home runs. He's someone that doesn't seem to. He's never been looked at as a great player. He's never been really looked at as an MVP. But pretty much every year you've known that you're going to get that 30 home run type production out of this guy.
Absolutely. Every year this guy will, to me, when you look at it, I always expect something special to come out of Paul Konerko. You know, his name has been brought up for the Team USA replacement, which is now Eric Hosmer, to play for Team USA. So I was like, maybe Konerko and Team USA could work out. But, overall, for Paul Konerko, who's getting up there at age, and you know what, this guy is still producing, and that's what this team really wants out of him, and every single year while they have him, still as a major league player for the White Sox, you really want to keep on, having the same season that he's been having every single year because, 1 year it's a 312 batting average, and you know what, it goes down a little bit, but you know what, this guy is able to, readapt and get back up to a higher average. His home run totals are very, very solid. So, overall, I think this guy gets kind of underlooked for an MVP.
Yeah, I think he always has. I mean, in the mid-2000s, he's a guy hitting 300 with 40 home runs. Now that would be an MVP-type candidate. Unfortunately, back then, you still had Barry Bonds. You still had a lot of the steroid era going on. You had Albert Pujols coming into his own with the Cardinals. So there was just some better seasons. But Paul Konerko very well could be a Hall of Famer before it's all said and done. Now, looking over at second base is Gordon Beckham, a guy that was always a top prospect for the Chicago White Sox team. And while he had 16 home runs, 60 RBIs, he's developed into a respectable player. The 234 average coming off a season in 2011 where he had 230. Gordon Beckham's just always really been a disappointment for this team because he was someone that teams really coveted in the minor leagues. If the White Sox came up in any big trade, teams wanted Gordon Beckham, and they held on to him. I think Roy Halladay for Gordon Beckham and other prospects came up, and the White Sox said no because they had such trust in what Gordon Beckham was going to be. And he's never really panned out to be that good.
Yeah, I mean, Gordon Beckham, I understand why our teams are going after him because, he's still very young. But, this guy has not produced well at the Major League level at all. Give him up for his great defensive ability, but, when he comes up to the plate, he does not wow you at all because, there's just, I don't understand why. I mean, I saw this guy down in the farm system in early 2008 and early 2009, and I've always thought that this guy was kind of rushed to the majors because, he goes from A-ball to AA to AAA, goes through all three of the rankings, but this guy has only packed a big average. He's not going to wow you with home runs. He does great defensive ability, but I honestly think the reason why he's not really productive is because he was rushed to the Major League level. I think on a championship caliber team that has a good shortstop and a second baseman, I think Gordon Beckham will serve as a backup. But you know what? You also got to look at right now that Gordon Beckham does play great defensive baseball. But after it's all said and done this year, I think it's going to be a make it or break it year for Beckham. His average, this is a guy who I can see somewhere down the line, if he's able to get back in the groove of things, I can see him possibly going back like how he hit in 2009, where he had a really productive year, about at 270. I think this guy can still get back in the groove. Does he have some power? Absolutely. He hit 16 home runs last year, and you know what? I think he can hit about 13 to 14 home runs at best this year.
And I think a guy to look at is Chase Headley, because Chase Headley was another top prospect that just didn't seem to pan out, and last year he exploded. I'm not saying that's going to happen with Gordon Beckham, but it very well could. As his backup, they had brought Jeff Keppinger in, as we mentioned before. Keppinger spent last season in Tampa Bay in 115 games, hit 325, 9 home runs, 40 RBIs. So basically what they did is they put pressure on Gordon Beckham. They bring in a backup who will give you a pretty respectable average in most years. He's not going to hit 325 like he did last year, but the Rays always seem to find guys, utility guys, in the perfect year. They did it last year with Keppinger, and I think that this is a move that they don't ever view Jeff Keppinger as their long-term second baseman, but they know that he'll push Gordon Beckham a little bit and that he has some ability around the rest of the infield. He's going to be the starter over at third base, obviously, and I think that they view him as a very good player coming in there. Alexi Ramirez is going to be the starting shortstop. Alexi Ramirez, I think, has been one of the most underrated shortstops in the game over the last few years. Hit 265 last year. I'd like to see the average get back up a little bit. 9 home runs. I'd like to see the home runs get back up a little bit. But a career high 20 stolen bases. He is a pretty solid fielder for this team. So I like Alexi Ramirez a lot.
You know, last year the power numbers went way down from the season prior in 2011. 15 home runs. Last year it was 9 home runs. But you know what? This guy is still a great productive piece to this team. You know, he's been a long tenure player of the team since 2008. Has been really phenomenal year in and year out for the team. You know what? It's very phenomenal that, you know, Alexi Ramirez, he's a treat to watch. This guy plays great defensive baseball. You're going to see him all the time this season when you watch, you know, MLB Tonight or MLB Network. You know, this guy is always good to have. You know what? He proves it year in and year out that he remains a White Sox for life.
So after backing him up, I should say, is Angel Sanchez. Sanchez last year with Houston, or actually in 2011 with Houston, 110 games, hit 240, 1 home run, 28 RBIs, stole 3 bases. So he got a look there, was relatively productive. I think that they need that 240 average to go up, but he did show some bright spots in fielding, or in the field, I should say. And then backing up in Oklahoma City last year at the AAA level, in 107 games, he hit 320 with 5 home runs and 45 RBIs, stole 7 bases. He's a piece that they view as someone that could potentially be a utility guy that is a late bloomer, because a lot of these utility guys we see come up and have very good years, they're not 26-year-old guys. They're 30, 31 years old, 28, 29 years old, guys that just something clicks for them in the role that they're in, that they've accepted that they're a pinch hitter, and something ultimately does click for them. Jeff Keppinger, I obviously mentioned him at second base because I think he will push Gordon Beckham a little bit, but he is going to be the starting third baseman coming off his best season of his career last year in Tampa Bay. That's prior to that he had been in Cincinnati, Houston. He had even spent some time early on in his career with the Mets. So, extremely productive year for Jeff Keppinger last year. It's going to be tough to follow up, though.
Yeah, going back to the Gordon Beckham situation, because that also relies here on Jeff Keppinger. If Jeff Keppinger really does, you know, wow the White Sox over at third base, you know, Gordon Beckham does not really work out this year. I really do see as Jeff Keppinger just waiting just to play full-time over at second base. And then you want to look at the backup for, you know, Jeff Keppinger for right now at third base. That's Brent Morel. Played phenomenal during his time with the White Sox, even though he's been mainly used, you know, during the 2011 campaign. He played 126 games, but he's also served a major amount of his career down at the, you know, the A level, has not really reached AAA a whole lot. But, you know, this guy has great power. You know, he's going to give you a good average. But you know what? When you look at currently at the Major League level, I think just Jeff Keppinger, you know, is just waiting to get the full-time over at second base. I think Gordon Beckham could fit into, you know, maybe a San Diego Padres team. You know, we'll just have to wait and see what Gordon Beckham has to bring to the plate this year, because like I said before, you know, it's make it or break it year for Beckham.
Yeah, I think Gordon Beckham is a piece that if he just got a change of scenery, maybe something would click. Because a lot of times guys come up, they're rushed, whatever, they have expectations and they don't live up to them, and they need to go somewhere else for whatever reason, and that's where it clicks. So maybe he does need to go to a different situation, and that's where he's going to be able to figure things out. I don't know. I mean, Jeff Keppinger is not going to produce at the level he did last year, so I don't know if he's a great option long-term at any position for this team, but he's going to be the starting third baseman as the season begins. And if Gordon Beckham doesn't work out, is it possible that they acquire another third baseman or give Morrill the spot? It's certainly possible, and then move Keppinger over to second. I'm not sure it's likely, but it's possible. Again, you mentioned Brent Morrill. He will be the backup. Brent Morrill last year, 35 games, hit 177 with 0 home runs. But in 2011 with this team, in 126 games, hit 245, 10 home runs. I think that that's more what you're going to get out of Morrill. Now, in left field, you're going with Diane Viciedo. Viciedo last year, in 147 games, quietly hit 25 home runs, 78 RBIs. He's a guy that a lot of MLB fans did not even realize had this good of a season for the White Sox. But he came up, hit 255, and that was prior to 2011 and 2010. He had gotten some looks at the MLB level, produced at a relatively high level, and then last year really got the chance to play full-time and show that this was his spot in left field, and he just had an extremely successful season.
Absolutely. I think this is a really underrated type of player going into this upcoming season, obviously. I think this is a guy, you know what, is he going to hit 25 home runs again? You know, that could be a great possibility, but you know what, looking at the minor league film, you always want to look back to the minor league film. You know, 2011 with the Charlotte Knights, 20 home runs. This guy is capable of reaching 20 home runs, but you know what, going into this season, he's going to be adapting every day, you know, also from last season. You know, we'll just have to wait and see. We'll just hope he doesn't get into, you know, a sophomore slump. I don't really count the 2011 campaign to 2010. He did see time, but you know, it wasn't full time. But you know, for me, it feels like he's going into a sophomore campaign. Let's just hope that this guy really brings it to the plate this year and be really productive, as he's going to be helping out this outfield for the Chicago White Sox.
Well, he is a guy that certainly been up there at the major league level before, but I think that this is really, it's a sophomore campaign in terms of being a starter. He has a lot to follow up after last year, and the White Sox need that production. Again, taking A.J. Pierzynski out of this lineup, not that Pierzynski's an MVP candidate, but taking him out of this lineup, they need some certainty with Viciedo in left field, and we'll see if they ultimately do get that. Jordan Danks will be the backup in left field. In 50 games last year, Danks hit 224, stole 3 bases. In the minor leagues, he had been a guy who had some power, even had hit for a pretty high average at AAA Charlotte prior to coming up last year. So he is someone that has some potential as a backup, as a fourth outfielder, and we'll see what he does this year. In center field, Alejandro De Aza will get the look. De Aza last year in 131 games hit 281, 9 home runs, 50 RBIs, stole 26 bases. Again, he's not a great player in terms of being a hitter. He's a solid hitter, nothing that blows your mind. But what he does bring to the table is a tremendous speed on the base paths. I mean, I really like what they have in De Aza here, and he's one of the more underrated center fielders.
This guy last year, I don't know how he is going to be putting into the card this year, but this guy was the leadoff hitter last year for this team, and he has really wowed me because this guy, like Tim said, he's not going to wow you with, you know, with a lot of highlights with the home runs and everything. You know, on average, he can probably get you at best maybe 6 or 7 home runs on average throughout his career. But you know what, this guy in his career on average. But you know what? De Aza really does well. He plays great defensive baseball. He has tremendous speed on the base path, and that's really dangerous for this team because this outfield, yes, it's a very fast outfield because you know Viciedo, the left fielder. This guy is also a stealing base machine. This guy, you know, he has great, you know, base running abilities, and so does De Aza. So, you know, I think that really makes a big dangerous move for any team to play against, you know, the White Sox, because if you got De Aza, you got the Viciedo, I'm having an issue with his name, but you know, these guys are very dangerous on the base path, and you know, that's what you're really going to be getting out of De Aza. And also for you fantasy players out there, if you guys have like it's later on in the draft for fantasy baseball, don't get me wrong, you can go out there, and if De Aza is available, you cannot go wrong with getting him, because you know what, year in and year out, you can probably end up getting a solid 280 to probably 260 average out of him. That, you know, it's pretty decent for me, but you know, that's pretty much what you're going to be getting out of De Aza.
Yeah, and you're also going to get the base stealing. 2 years ago in 54 games, for whatever this means, he did hit 329, so he is still a guy that I think has a little bit more potential over the 281 that he hit last year. We'll see. He came up kind of late in his career, got some looks with the Marlins and never really surfaced there. But since coming to the White Sox in 2010, he's found his career and he's been very successful in this organization. Alex Rios, once a top prospect and really a top player, the Blue Jays almost traded him for Tim Lincecum once for the Toronto Blue Jays, enters his 4th full season with the Chicago White Sox. Played 3.5 prior to this in 157 games last year. Had, I think, one of his best seasons, if not his best. Hit 304 with 25 home runs, 91 RBIs, stole 23 bases. And all of a sudden, Alex Rios didn't look like the bust. Bust that we had labeled him. He looked like the guy that we thought after 2007 that hit 297 with 24 home runs, 85 RBIs, and looked like he was destined to be a star. he looked like that last year. Maybe not a superstar, but certainly at an all-star level. And I don't know if he can repeat that, but what we finally got out of Alex Rios was that overall production in every part of the game, whether it was in the field, on the base pass, at the plate, both hitting for contact and power and driving runs in. So Alex Rios really impressed me last year.
Last year was the season that we've just been waiting for. Alex Rios had career numbers last year, having a high 25 home runs, a high 91 RBIs, and has a career high in average, batting 304 last year. We just hope that he can just continue on a phenomenal streak last year, with great production that he got for the team. Looking into 2013, you hope that he can do this the same, because I really think that this White Sox team can really compete against, the whole, revamp of this whole division, with the Royals coming up. We got the Tigers that's really competing, and you got the Indians. I still think that the White Sox are in there, but you know what? You need full production, with Rios we did last year, with Cornerico. I think this team can really make a good jump in for this. It's up in the air right now in the AL Central is what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, there isn't any question about that, and we'll get to that more at the end of the video when we make some predictions. Dwayne Wise is the final piece in this outfield, and we talked about him earlier. Just the thing with Dwayne Wise, great fielder. He's never been a guy that you even really put up at the plate more than like 80, 85 times a year at best. So I think that his role on this team is to occasionally pinch run, but for the most part, if he is on the opening day roster or whenever he is on the roster, because he's bound to be at some point this year, his role really is to be that guy that is a defensive replacement late in games. Now, going to the starting rotation, one of the reasons this team was able to have such success was the early, just incredible pitching of Chris Sale, which really nobody saw coming, at least not at the level that he pitched at last year. In 2011, Chris Sale was extremely productive in the bullpen for the White Sox with the 2.79 ERA in close to 60 games. Last year, making the transition to the starting rotation, went 17-8 with a 3.05 ERA, 30 total games. Had one complete game, was not a shutout, but it was a complete game. And I just think overall that Chris Sale really impressed me. I don't know if he's going to be able to duplicate what he did last year, but he does have a bright future for this White Sox team.
Absolutely. Now, Tim, you pretty much covered that really well, but you know what? I got to ask you this huge question right here. Do you think with the production that Chris Sale had last year, does that make him one of the best pitchers in baseball right now? Is he up in the league of Lincecum, Matt Cain? Well, not Tim Lincecum has been on a drought, but Matt Cain, Strasburg, Kershaw. I know there's so many people out there just throwing his name up with those guys. Do you think this guy has what it takes to be up there?
I'm not sure that he's up there, but I think that he had a season last year that put him in the Cy Young race. I don't think he's as good as Justin Verlander and Weaver and Kershaw and the guys that you put up in that discussion. But was he last year one of the top 10 or 15 pitchers in baseball? Yeah, he was, and he really did pitch like an ace for this team.
Yeah, overall, I'm a huge fan of Chris Hill from last year. I think this guy, was it a perfect game or was it a or no hitter? I don't know exactly for sure. But this guy pitched phenomenal. Big ups to him. Let's just hope that he can just have the same numbers, because this White Sox team at the pitching rotation is very solid in depth.
Now, at the number 2 spot, Jake Peavy had a huge bounce-back year for this team. I believe he was an all-star last year, going 11-12 with a 3.37 ERA through 4 complete games and pitched over 219 innings. And really, for the first time since he had been with the White Sox, was able to stay healthy, signed a contract extension to remain with the team. And is he ever going to be the guy that won close to 20 games in 2007 and won a Cy Young and was just absolutely filthy when he was with the Padres? No, he's not going to be that ever again. But what he has returned to is being a very good number 2 starter, and we saw that last year with the 3.37 ERA in the 4 complete games.
Now, when he came over to the White Sox, I think it was, in 2010, and I had a big ups for, Jake Peavy coming over. I thought it was actually in 2009. I think he actually did come over, now 2010. But, this guy has really fell off. It was pretty much really due to the injuries that the White Sox really needed a starting pitcher at the time, and I was like, you're getting Jake Peavy, who is just phenomenal with the Padres. He's coming over to the White Sox, transversing over into the American League. Now, has he ever has he been on a downward spiral a little bit? A little. But you know what? Last year in 2012, he was able to redeem himself. Is he going to be back up there as an ace somewhere down the line in his career? You know, that's still up in the air for me as well, because, you know, with what Major League Baseball has that currently right now, I think Jake Peavy will serve as a solid number 2. And you know what? That's what this White Sox team is getting. You know, Jake Peavy, he needs to have another productive year, and I really think that somewhere down the line, once his deal with the White Sox is up, they're going to go out there and re-sign him. I think he's going to be worth the money.
Yeah, I think he is someone that they should, or that they really need the production from this year, because, again, there's no certainty with what you're getting out of Chris Sale. He had a great first season in the rotation last year, but he could very well fall into a slump this year in his sophomore year in the starting rotation. So they need the production out of Jake Peavy, because that's really the one certainty they can get. At the 3 spot, John Danks is going to be your starter. He only made 9 total starts last year due to injury. Went 3-4, I should say, with a 5.70 ERA. So really struggled. Prior to that, in 2009 to 2011, this was a guy that you could count on for an ERA between about 3.70 and 4. I'm looking at about a 15 or a 13-win season with about a 3.70, 3.80 ERA for John Danks.
That's just hoping that he's 100% healthy. I think going into this year, you know, he's got to carry a big workload right in the middle of the pitching rotation. But you know what? I think just health is a factor. Do you think he can reach up there? Absolutely. I think what he has, what it takes. But you know what? When I jot down the prediction numbers that we do before the video stem, I actually have John Danks at 11 to 12 wins this year.
Yeah, I think he'll be right in that area. He could certainly get up to 13 or 14. He's even had 15 once in his career as well. Gavin Floyd is going to be the number 4 starter. Gavin Floyd last year, 12-11, 4.29 ERA. You know what you're getting out of Gavin Floyd. It's going to be a guy who has an ERA close to about 4.10, 4.20. Is going to give you 160, 180 innings, somewhere in between that area. And there are times where Gavin Floyd will look like a very good starter. There's times where he will be a big disappointment. Overall, I think with Gavin Floyd, he's a solid number 4 starter for this White Sox team.
You know, I like Gavin Floyd. I know there's so many teams, like, when it comes to the trade deadline, a lot of teams have been going after him. I know teams like the Rangers just really comes to my mind. But you know what? I really like what the White Sox have set out and what they're going to be doing with Chris Sale. You know, last year, his ERA was just high. Well, we'll just focus in on 2012 now. But, you know, when you look at it in 2012 last year, you know, his ERA was at a high at 4.29. You know, he brought that down from the season prior where you had a 4.37 ERA. But you know what? On a championship caliber team, Chris Sale is obviously, you know, where he is right now. He's a number 4 guy. And you know what? You just hope that he can really get down, bring that ERA down a little bit more, get more velocity on his fastball, and just really work on his pitching mechanics this year, because you know what? He's got to bring that ERA down if this team is really going to compete. You cannot give up so many runs on what he did last year.
Jose Quintana is going to fill out this rotation at the number 5 spot. Quintana last year went 6-6 with a 3.76 ERA. That will fill out their rotation. I think he is a pretty solid number 5 starter, very young, so they'll see the production that they get out of him. And Justin, let's look towards the bullpen now, because this is a team that has a lot of high-profile names in this bullpen. Jesse Crane will be the first one. He was scheduled to pitch for Team Canada, his native country, in the World Baseball Classic, but because of a hip problem, he has pulled out of that. He went 2-3 last year with a 2.44 ERA. Extremely productive as a middle reliever. Matt Lidstrom is another guy that they have on this roster. Spent last season in Arizona and Baltimore, going combined 1-0 with a 2.68 ERA. Matt Thornton is going to be the main setup man for this team. Last year with a 3.46 ERA, even saved 3 games. And then your setup man, or your closer, I should say, will be Addison Reed. Reed went 3-2 last year, saved 29 of 33 games. The 4.75 ERA is a bit high, but overall, I think with Addison Reed, he had a pretty solid first year as the closer for the White Sox.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Addison Reed is really, really phenomenal. He's still up and coming. He's adapting over to, you know, the closer role. During his time down in the minors in the 2011 season and 2010 was when he got, I think he was actually drafted by the Chicago White Sox. You know, this guy has a great future, has great velocity. I think he can add another pitch to his arsenal of pitching. But you know what? He's still an up-and-coming guy. If you guys want to go out there and get a closer in your fantasy leagues, you cannot go wrong with Addison Reed also in the later rounds. Now, when you look more into depth into the bullpen, Tim, you pretty much covered, Matt Thornton, Jesse Crane, Lindstrom. One guy that really comes to mind and is still really upcoming is Dylan Axelrod. Now, Axelrod has been with the team since 2007. He has not seen, full-time action, in 2011. Only saw 4 games. But, watching this guy in the Arizona Fall League, down at the Charlotte Knights level and the AA level, I actually do not know their AA team. I think the Bison, or is that Tampa Bay? But, getting back to Axelrod, this guy is great. This guy is phenomenal. His ERA wasn't where it was last year in 14 games. He had a 5.47 average, if that really does count of last year because he didn't get to see a lot of time. But you know what? This is a guy you guys really want to look out for you White Sox fans who are big into the prospects era and area of Major League Baseball. You really want to look out for Dylan Axelrod as he could possibly even be making an impact in this bullpen in 2013.
All right, so Justin, overall, they did go 85 and 77 last year, but the unfortunate thing for them is the Tigers should only get better this year. They had a disappointing regular season last year, and they still went to the World Series. They're still going to be getting back Victor Martinez this year. Prince Fielder, I still don't think did as much as he could have last year. The Royals are a team that I expect to make a big improvement this year. The Indians signed Michael Bourne. They signed Nick Swisher. They bring in Terry Francona as their manager, and the Twins probably won't be quite as bad as they were last year. So, Justin, when I'm looking at this White Sox team right now, I'm seeing a third-place team, a team that's about 77 wins this year.
You know what? You guys are really going to be surprised what I have. I think this team does have, the great bits, the great, pieces. What they have right now, you got Diasa, you got a couple of, up-and-coming guys, Vacido. I mean, I'm still having an issue with the guy's last name, Taylor Flowers. But you know what? When you look at the American League Central, Tim, you covered it well with the Tigers. I have me and you have big hopes for the Royals this year. But you know what? A lot of people are really underestimating what the Cleveland Indians do have. And you know what? I think when you look at, I do have Detroit in first place, so there's a spoiler for you guys when we give our overall, rankings in the division. I have Detroit in first, but you can also be competing for second place for the White Sox, Kansas City, and even Cleveland, who acquired, Michael Bourne in free agency. You know what? I can see this team really competing for second place, but overall, I have them in third place. When it's all said and done, when the season's over, I think this team is going to make a run for third place.
All right, so that is your Chicago White Sox 2013 season preview. Justin, next we are on to their crosstown rivals, the Chicago Cubs. That will be our next team. For now, I'm Tim Kelly.
That'll be a hoot and a holler.
With Justin Godsey. We'll see you later.